Happy Independence Day or Independence Day Eve, 12s, with the 4th of July coming up as we celebrate Independence Day. What are some of the most explosive Seahawk playmakers on the roster heading into 2025? We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined by my co-host, Nick Lee. I know it's not Friday, but he decided let's do a Thursday episode as we head into the holiday weekend. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Whether you're listening from Richmond, Indiana, or Ocean Shore, Washington, we appreciate each and every one of you. We are going to be doing a lot of firework and explosive themed topics on today's show, and why not? It's the 4th of July Eve. And so we're going to be tackling the most explosive Seahawks in 2025. We're going to revisit some of the most explosive games in Seahawks history, jogging some of those old cobwebs out, Nick. And we're going to talk fireworks with a fun edition of What's the Odds, looking towards this upcoming season. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can get just $5, or new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now for your lead story here on our Independence Day Eve Locked On Seahawks. We are only 3 weeks away. That's right, exactly 3 weeks away from the start of training camp. Football season is almost here. We've got fireworks set to go off the next few days across the country. So it's the perfect time to talk about the most explosive Seahawks heading into this new season. And one thing I always love about this, and we do this every year, Nick, this is one of our annual shows that we do leading up to the 4th of July. But what I love about it is the term explosive, there can be a little bit of ambiguity to it in terms of what you view as explosive on a football field. And so we're going to be ranking our top 5 most explosive Seahawks going into the 2025 season. And I'm curious what the criteria is for explosive when we're talking about Seahawks. So let's get to it. Let's dive in, Nick. And let's start at the bottom of our list. Let's work from 5 down to 1. Who comes in at number 5 on your list for most explosive Seahawks?
I'm going to start with this might be surprising, he's at 5. Ken Walker III is on there, but still top 5 explosive Seahawk. And when I think of explosive, I think of 2 things. I think obviously on offense, or 2 things: big plays. On offense, long touchdown runs, long touchdown catches, or turning power into speed as quickly as possible. And on defense, same thing, and also with pick sixes and getting off the line of scrimmage on defensive line. So for Ken Walker, big plays. We're thinking big plays with running backs. And I was looking back to, man, if he can just regain some of the health, and I know the offense is a little different. The offensive line was jumbled up, but his rookie year, my goodness, he was 5th in the NFL in 15-plus yard runs, and ahead of Christian McCaffrey as a rookie. So he had a really explosive rookie year. In the last couple of years, some health, some offensive issues outside of his control have limited his explosiveness and his production. But I think the 2022 version of Ken Walker III is absolutely still in there somewhere.
I'm going to start on defense with number 5, and it might be a player who isn't going to rank. A lot of our listeners are going to say, well, explosive, it tells me speed. And that is part of the equation, but I think you've also got to consider instincts, because there are guys that play faster because of their instincts, and that makes them explosive in their own way, particularly when it comes to deciphering what the other team is doing with their routes, with their play calling. Julian Love, the pride of Notre Dame, he comes in at number 5, not just because of the instincts that allow him to be able to play faster, and not that he was slow coming out of Notre Dame, very good athlete, but that instinct, the ability to decipher plays, it makes him play like he's a 4-3 guy a lot of the time, the way he just flies all over the field. And we know that he was one of Seattle's top interception producers last year. He can produce sacks when they blitz him. He is a guy that can be an explosive hitter coming out of the safety position. To me, he checks off a lot of different boxes that make him an explosive playmaker for the Seahawks. And I still think there's some room for him to be even better this year. So he might not be the most explosive athlete on Seattle's roster, but Julian Love is absolutely an explosive playmaker. And on the offensive side, coming in at number 4, Jackson Smith-Njigba is never going to be a guy that is going to be doing what DK Metcalf did the last 6 years, where he's consistently just outrunning guys on verticals and you throw a bomb and he gets an 80-yard touchdown. That's not the kind of explosives that you're going to get from Jackson Smith-Njigba. However, as we've seen the last 2 years, you're going to get a lot of big plays on posts and corner routes, and I cannot wait to see what Clint Kubiak does. Explosiveness is also about the ability to power through tackles and be able to generate yards to the catch. That is where the dynamite is at with Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I think this offense is going to unlock more of that. So Smith-Njigba coming in at number 4 for me as Seattle's number 1 receiver. Maybe isn't the big play threat that Metcalf was, at least the same style, but I think you can get plenty of chunk plays with JSN.
I'll go 4 through 2 here. My fourth is a wild card a little bit, and it remains to be seen how much screen time or he's going to get this year, how many snaps. Jalen Milroe is of course, the quarterback position is way more nuanced than just, are you a good athlete and can you run fast? But just exactly. The pure running and explosive athlete, there are maybe just a handful of quarterbacks on any NFL roster that have the pure explosive athleticism as Jalen Milroe. Of course, there's other things that are involved with being a good quarterback in the NFL. That remains to be seen if Milroe can reach that. But as far as just being an explosive athlete, just turn on the tape at Alabama. I mean, my gosh, just explosive athlete. I cannot wait to see if the Seahawks can get him in some packages to kind of accentuate those abilities. And then 3 and 2, both on defense for me. Leonard Williams, the Big Cat himself. I mean, you can't have the nickname Big Cat and not be explosive. 3 might be too low for the big guy. When I think of explosiveness with trench players, is the size to strength to speed and athleticism kind of ratios there. And Leonard Williams grades out just about as good as any defensive lineman in football with just all those traits, and had a fantastic season last year. Huge snub, as we've well documented, in the postseason award category. And then for number 2, I'll leave my number 1 here as a mystery for now for a sec. Number 2 is Reek Woolen, and he has a chance to be 1. As far as my criteria for explosive, it's hard to get more explosive than Reek Woolen. Maybe with the lack of sheer girth and size, weight, maybe that's where it falls short. But just he's about as pure an athlete, fluid an athlete as you will find in the NFL. And we've talked about all off season, if he can recapture that magic as a rookie, learn some things from his mistakes the last couple of years, and still harness that elite 99th percentile athleticism, we still have a special player in Woolen.
Woolen was the last player off my list because obviously we know the 4.26 speed. Nobody on this roster is that fast. So in terms of explosiveness there, and we've seen a pick 6 from him before, he would absolutely belong on this list. But I'm going with another corner at number 3 because to me, part of being explosive is also the dynamite aspect. And I don't know there's a player in Seattle's roster that sums up, boom, here comes the dynamite more than Devin Witherspoon. When he is laying guys out in the run game, when he is picking up Kyler Murray, throwing him to the ground, and then stepping over him like he's in a WWE ring. I don't know if it's legal for him to do that or not, but we've seen him do it, and he's a trash talker. He's explosive in that regard, and we've seen the pick 6 a couple years ago. I just think he is an explosive playmaker. The blitzing ability that he brings, shot out of a cannon, out of the nickel. He's number 3. I've got Leonard Williams at number 2. I mean, did you watch that big man return that pick against Aaron Rodgers last year? He had afterburners coming out of his pants. This guy's 300 pounds, and he was running downfield like he weighed 240. It was so much fun to watch. And then the explosiveness when it comes to turning his speed out of his stance into power and just bullying people to get after the quarterback. He's at number 2. And I'll just get to my number 1 here. You had him at 5. Ken Walker III, we haven't seen as much of it in the last 2 years, but there is not a guy on Seattle's roster that I think when the football is in his hands, there's not a guy that I have more inclined to think anytime that ball's in his hands, he could be in the end zone because he has the acceleration, the juice. We saw it in the rookie year, especially the touchdown against the Jets, the one he had against the Chargers, where that really did look like he was shot out of a cannon. He's just got that extra gear, and he shifts into it so fast, like a Lamborghini. Like, he is just incredibly agile. He's incredibly good at getting that accelerator boosted quickly and getting up to top speed. He's got the juice, man. So Ken Walker III coming in at number 1 for me.
Well, if he's a Lamborghini, my number 1 is the Batmobile, and that is Nick Manwari. Nick Manwari, I know it might be a little controversial to have a rookie who hasn't taken an official snap as a Seahawk, but, I mean, we all fell in love with this kid before he even was a Seahawk. We were talking him in the pre-draft process. But talking about, if you want to go explosive, I know this is low-hanging fruit, but literally got a perfect score in the relative athletic score. Literally tested out as the number 1 out of 1,079 strong safeties who have registered with RAS since 1987. We're talking about a truly special generational athlete. Now, again, there's a lot more that goes into being a generational NFL football player than just that. But as far as a pure explosive athlete, it is really hard to find someone more so than Nick Manwari, the Batmobile.
Listen, it's been a long time. I'm a huge Small Soldiers fan, and I have a nickname now for Nick Manwari. Nick Nitro. He is going to be so much fun to watch with the athleticism, the size, and hopefully the ball skills that we saw at college translating to the NFL. When we come back, we're going to keep talking fireworks, but we're going to go with a little bit of a blast to the past. Nick and I are going to be revisiting several of our favorite games where the Seahawks lit up scoreboards, some both on offense and defense, maybe some special teams as well. We'll get to that coming up next year on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights like Nick and I are, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet, especially during the dog days of baseball season. As teams vie for playoff positioning, it's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If I think Alejandro Kirk is going to hit for the cycle, yes, he's fast enough to hit a triple for the Blue Jays. I can bet on it without a hitch. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's Nick Lee. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in on this Independence Day Eve episode. We greatly appreciate your support. Continuing the fireworks and explosiveness theme here, heading into the holiday weekend. We just talked Seattle's most explosive players entering 2025. Nick, let's take a blast to the past, though. Let's look back at some of the most explosive games in Seahawks history. Now, we're going to both make this very clear. I'm a little older than you, but I was born late 1980s. I'm not going to sit here and reminisce about games where Seattle scored 50 points in 1977. I probably watched it because I'm a nerd like that, but I was not alive. So we're going to stick to that criteria. It had to be games that we actually saw, which luckily most of Seattle's high-scoring games fit in that criteria. So, Nick, let's get it started here. What's the first game that comes to your memory when you think of explosive Seahawk performances?
Well, full disclosure, if you haven't followed me for long, I am a true 12, married a Seahawks girl right before the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, moved up here, and was just hooked, obviously. So my history is, I've done my research since then, but I'm going to go in chronological order based on what I remember are just things that pop immediately out of the head. 2015 Steelers. The 2015 Steelers game is where I'm going to first start with Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson. I mean, it was just an absolute bloodbath defensively for both sides. Both reached over almost 350 passing yards. There was almost 1,000 total yards, and the Seahawks were able to win by actually more than one score, which you don't usually, when you think of shootouts, you think of, close games, but the Seahawks did pull away late with a late Doug Baldwin, an 80-yard touchdown from Russell Wilson. Talk about explosive plays there. So, and the Seahawks were able to win 39-30. And then, of course, one that really sticks out to me, I'll do three. This is my second one. The one that, this was truly a new era of Seahawks football, one that is much maligned, and 2017 against the Texans. That was certainly what happened to the Seahawks defense, but also who the heck is this Deshaun Watson kid? I mean, unfortunately, we know now. But also Russell Wilson was answering them tit for tat. Both guys reached over 400 yards. Both guys had 4 passing touchdowns. And again, almost 1,000 total yards. Seahawks pull out the late touchdown with Jimmy Graham finding the end zone with 21 seconds left for the Seahawks to go up 41-38. Just an epic battle that certainly caused many heart palpitations around the Pacific Northwest, with the sheer lack of defense, but also just how close it was, and this Watson kid coming into Seattle and just kind of pushing them around a little bit on defense. But overall, just talk about fireworks. That's about as fireworky a game gets.
Yeah, you mentioned 2 games that were close. I want to start off with one that was not, because, look, I don't always love blowouts, but this is one that I vividly remember from that pre-Super Bowl season. It was 2012, and the Cardinals, they were reeling. Ken Wisenhunt, this was the last game that he coached for the Arizona Cardinals, and understandably so. Seattle, just from the outset, I think John Skelton statistically completed more passes to Cardinals receivers, but it just felt like he completed more passes to Seahawks defenders. He threw 4 picks. The Cardinals had a fumble in the end zone that Malcolm Smith recovered, and they ended up winning this game 58-0. They got a shutout, and they scored 58 points. They had Malcolm Smith's defensive score. Marshawn Lynch had 3 rushing touchdowns. He and Robert Turbin both had over 100 rushing yards. I don't know if they ever did that a second time in their entire career. Russell Wilson only had 1 passing touchdown and an interception. He didn't have to do much. I think he completed 7 passes the entire game. But they were running the football all over Arizona. They kept getting short field because of John Skelton's interception frenzy, this dominant Legion of Boom defense. It was one of those coming out party games in 2012. So that one is one that always jumps out to me. I want to transition, and we're thinking the same era roughly here, but it actually was the same season. It might have been the next week, actually, in Toronto. The Bills were still playing a game every year in Toronto at that point, and Buffalo was kind of a fringe wildcard team at that point, and Seattle went to Toronto and scored 50 points. Earl Thomas had a pick 6 against Ryan Fitzpatrick. Russell Wilson had 4 touchdowns, and 3 of them were rushing, almost 100 rushing yards from the quarterback position. That was kind of the game where it's like read option can still be ran, and they just ran it all over the Buffalo Bills. And that was just another one of those games everybody started to think, could this be a Super Bowl team here in 2012? Because they were just putting points on the board in bunches there for the last couple of weeks of that 2012 season. And now I want to take a blast of the past from our perspective. I was 13 years old when this game happened, but I remember, I believe it was a Monday night game against the Minnesota Vikings. It was prime time, but I believe it was a Monday night game. And 2002, Sean Alexander at that point, he had just become the starter. I mean, Ricky Waters was the guy for 3 years. And the first year for Sean Alexander, he was number 2. Alexander was the guy for the first time. Seattle raced out to a 45-10 lead that night on, like I said, I think it was Monday Night Football. And Sean Alexander scored not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 touchdowns by himself in the first half. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, but his most explosive play He caught a screen pass from Trent Dilfer and took it 80 yards behind a caravan that had Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson out in front of him and took it 80 yards for a score. Again, it was 45-10 at halftime. And basically it was Sean Alexander 38, Vikings 10. I mean, the field goal they got was off of a big run by Sean Alexander, over 130 rushing yards, almost 100 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns in that game. That is one of my favorite Seahawks games that I ever watched all time. And it really was a game that got me. I was already hooked on football, but this made me absolutely addicted. And it's another reason why I think Sean Alexander is still somehow a criminally underrated running back, not just in Seahawks lore, but in NFL history.
Man, you're taking me back. I do, even though I wasn't technically a Seahawks fan, in the 2000s, I did have family in Spokane, so if they were good, I was all in. And I definitely remember the Sean Alexander days. Those were a lot of fun. I would always duel the San Diego Chargers versus those Seahawks with my cousins on Madden, 2004.
Sean Alexander on rushing attack.
That was, HB dive. My cousin would just HB dive me to death with Sean Alexander. And then I'll end with a more recent one for everybody. And the Seahawks and Lions have had some absolute barn burners the last few years. I know last year wasn't quite to that level. That still was fairly exciting and explosive, but man, 2022 was on a different level. The both teams, this one did exceed 1,000 total yards between the two teams, which, oh my gosh, and over 90 total points and over 300 yards passing. The Seahawks ran for 235 yards as a team. Rashad Penny had, I think, the majority of those. I think he had 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. They weren't just like, halfback dive 3 yards in the end zone. It was like explosive 30, 40-plus yard rushing touchdowns. It was just defense optional on both sides. I was watching, actually it was in Vegas, and I was watching this on a big screen in a sports book, and everyone, everyone's got TVs, but as the game went on, more and more people started huddling around this game. Like, what is going on in Detroit? It ended up, I was wearing a Seahawks jersey, and it ended fairly nice for us as Seahawks Nation. 48-45, the Seahawks ended up winning, but they actually were up by 10 until a late surge by the Lions. But just a monster game on the ground for Rashad Penny. That was a lot of fun. And Geno Smith, too.
Unfortunately, that was one of those games where you just realized, gosh, if you could have just kept Rashad Penny healthy, just how good of a running back he could have been. I'm going to say this. You can look at the draft situation where they picked him and say, God, that was a bust. But when he played, he was well worth that pick. Like he played to that caliber of player, and that was one of those games where he was just every time he touched it, you were talking about a guy that was explosive at 220 plus pounds. He judged the ball like he might take it anytime he touches it because he just had that kind of playmaking ability. When we come back, let's shift back to the present and play a little bit of What's the Odds Fireworks edition. Going to be a really fun segment. We'll get to that coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to Locked On Seahawks Independence Day Eve edition here. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by Nick Lee. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And best wishes to you, your friends and family here as we head into the 4th of July holiday weekend. Make sure to make it a great one and have a blast with your loved ones. Let's play a game, shall we? Normally we reserve this to Friday, but with tomorrow being the 4th, and we're not going to have a show here on Locked On Seahawks, we're going to be celebrating away from the podcast realm tomorrow. But with that being said, we've got game day on a Thursday, and we're going to play one of our traditional favorites, What's the Odds Explosives edition. And what we're going to be doing, going to be dishing out a bunch of statements on explosive-related plays for the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to be saying what the odds are the Seahawks accomplish that feat in 2025. So some of these are for players, some of them are for position groups, some of them are for full units. Let's get to it. What are the odds, Nick? Ken Walker III has 28 runs of 10 or more yards.
I was looking at Pro Football Focus, and like I mentioned, that rookie year, he had a fantastic explosive. He had 29, I believe, his rookie year. Yep. So you're saying, what are the odds he gets 28? So what are the odds he essentially reaches that rookie number? I'm going to go 50% only because, not that I don't think he can't do it, and I do think this offense with Clint Kubiak does tailor to his skill set and has a bit of the home run capabilities. Just maybe a lack of true bell cow carry numbers with what Zach Charbonnet can also bring to the table. I do wonder how many true, obviously dominant heavy carry games for Ken Walker himself he's going to get. But I do think he can definitely have maybe the second best of his career. 29, that's pretty high. I'm going to maybe get in the 25 range, but I think it's 50%. I could be talked into it happening.
Yeah, I'm going to go 60%, just a little above you, just because I think that Ken Walker III going into a contract year, I think that he is going to be extra motivated, and I think that this offense fits his skill sets much better than what Ryan Grubbs does. Now, health permitting, if the health ends up failing him again, he's not going to get to this number. But he's done it before. It's not like this is a number that he's never reached before. It is definitely attainable. And I think the offensive line is going to be better. And that's going to help create more opportunities for him to get space. And that's all he needs. He just needs some space with those physical tools, the athleticism, the explosion that he has. So I'm going to go 60% on this one. What's the odds Sam Darnold finishes in the top 3 in big-time throws in 2025?
Well, just for full transparency, what is a big-time throw? Pro Football Focus says a pass with excellent ball location, timing, generally thrown further down the field and or a tighter window. And last year, I believe Sam Darnold finished 4th with 34, ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, the 2 Super Bowl quarterbacks. Some of that is with the accumulating stats. I don't think he's going to get there just by sheer numbers of attempts. I'm going to go 10% because it's just different offenses. Last year, I think we saw the full 100th percentile Sam Darnold, and I don't think we're going to get that this year. I'm straight up. I just don't think so. Just with the different offense, a little bit different mindset with running the ball. He's not going to get the accumulating, pass attempts. And also last year he was just on one. I don't think he's going to get there. I'm going to go 10%. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad year, but last year, just with the counting stats, he's not going to reach, and just the 100th percentile of all the things he had working for him, I just don't see it.
I'm going to go 2.5%. I think, and look, I'm going to give you one reason why. No Justin Jefferson. And look, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a really good receiver, and he's got a chance to this year be a top 10 target. I still think Cooper Kupp can be a top 15 caliber player as long as he stays healthy. I just don't think this offense is going to be built on some of those explosives the way that it has been for most of the last 15 years, quite frankly. I just don't think that's going to be quite as big of a part of this offense. I think Darnold's got a chance to be in the top 10, absolutely. I think top 3, though, it's going to be extremely hard for me. Now, maybe we come out early in the year and we find out Clint Kubiak's cooking baby up and makes it work. But I am very, I guess pessimistic is the right word on this one. I'm just pessimistic they're going to be able to do this. What are the odds Jalen Milroe rushes for 150 yards this season?
Well, I don't think he actually racks up a ton of yardage, and only because I do see him being kind of like a goal line package sort of deal or short yardage package sort of thing. So it's not necessarily he's going to break, he's going to have all this space to run 20, 30-yard runs. So I think he'll just have a lack of opportunities to reach that. I think I am really excited to see what they can cook up with Milroe. I think if he's just standing there on the sidelines with the ball cap on all season, that's a waste. Just with the athletic, like we talked about, just explosiveness. I'm going to go 30%. I do think he can reach 100 just with the amount of carries and stuff. The extra 50, where does that come from? And just where he is on the field with, like 3rd and 1, 4th and inches, or just inside the 10-yard line. Don't think he gets there.
I'm going to go 15%. I could see him get to 100, but I'm with you. The touchdowns, that's where I'm looking at, because I think he's going to get utilized most in those situations in the red zone, or it's going to be your 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and 2 type situations in short yardage. And maybe he breaks a 50-yard run on one of those situations around midfield or something. Who knows? But I am thinking it's probably much more likely that he's in that 75 to 110 range is about where I would think as kind of being a package player. What are the odds Jackson Smith-Njigba has 2 50-plus yard touchdown receptions this season?
I think last year his longest was in the 40s. I'm gonna go 40% because he can do it, and he's going to be the alpha this year in the receiver room and probably the primary target schemed around. But as we've talked about with the style of offense they're going to play, I don't think there's going to be a crazy, 4 verts offense going on here with Sam Darnold. So again, a little bit of a lack of opportunity, but 150-yard touchdown, sure. I think he can get there just by sheer ability, but multiple with just all the things working against him and not outside of his control. Maybe less than 50%, but it's not impossible.
I'm going to go 50% just because even though this is not an offense that I think is going to be predicated on taking shots downfield, we saw it with the Saints last year. They had plenty of chunk plays, and I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is really underrated in that regard. Again, he's not going to be running a bunch of verticals down the field and just outrunning guys. But in terms of getting chunk plays on corner routes, post routes, wheel routes, down the seam, from the slot, there's a lot of ways that he can create a big chunk of yardage. And heck, I could see a screen busting and he breaks a couple tackles and then gets 50 yards on a touchdown. Like, I think that there is a really good chance that he can at least be in contention for this, even in this offense. I just don't know that they're going to have the volume of the chunk plays and the explosives that we've seen, but I can see a couple big plays on touchdown catches for Jackson Smith-Njigba. What are the odds that Devin Witherspoon gets 2 pick sixes? We saw him do 1 a couple years ago. He didn't have any picks last season. This would be a really juicy one to put much of a percentage on.
Yes. I mean, again, pick sixes, some of it is luck. Some of it is, I think that teams are going to shy away from challenging Spoon a ton. Some of it is where he's positioned on the field, how he's utilized. So again, a little bit of a lack of opportunity. I'm going to go 15% because he can get 1. We saw that was a heck of a pick six too. It wasn't just, your run-of-the-mill pick six on Monday Night Football 2 seasons ago against the Giants. But, not even anything last year, which is a bummer. I think he's going to get more of an opportunity this year just being put in more positions to succeed. But again, a lot of luck goes into pick sixes. I mean, when you have Leonard Williams with more pick sixes than Devin Witherspoon last year, there's a little bit of luck involved, although the big cat can scoot, as we said. I'm going to go, like less than 15, or like less than 20%, 15%, something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to go 10% on this one just because most guys I would probably go much lower than that, but this is Devin Witherspoon. And I do think if he plays a little more on the boundary like I'm expecting this year, I do think he may get more chances to make plays in the football. And he is one of those guys, if he jumps around and with his instincts, he picks a ball off. He can go the distance anytime. So I think it's unlikely he gets 2 of them, but let's go with 10% of this one. Real quick, our final one here. What are the odds Seattle returns 3 fumbles of 50-plus yards? This might seem way out there, but it felt like that. I mean, I didn't actually look this up before the show, but it felt like the Seahawks had at least 2 of those last year. And they got the athletes on defense to scoop and pick up and get big chunk plays.
Man, 3. That's the one that sticks out to me is the Rayshon Jenkins one from last year for sure. The 100 the distance there.
Derek Hall had a 50-something yarder.
Yeah, that's right. That was the other one I was thinking of. I couldn't remember if that was 50 yards or not. But 3, that's juicy. I'm going to go 25% because, like you mentioned, Seahawks have some elite athletes. We talked about in the first segment, some explosive athletes who can make some explosive plays. So 2, I think, is within the realm of possibility. This defense is going to be, I think, very opportunistic. But 3, that's pretty darn juicy. 25% for me.
I'm going to stun people here. I'm going 70%. This is almost in the I believe in Santa realm, but they had 2 of them last year. And look, I just think you added athletes, and you have most of your guys returning. Like, you have 2 linebackers that could pick a ball up and take it back. You now have Nick Emanwari, Nick Nitro himself. You've got Witherspoon. You've got Reek Woolen. If he picks up a fumble, who's catching it? I believe we've got 3 long fumble returns by this football team.
All right, the bell's ringing, I believe.
I'm going 70%. This is one that's going to be fun to revisit some point during the season. So I'm going to go 70%. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at Nick Lee 51. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure that you don't miss a single episode. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we are going to celebrate the 4th of July holiday with our families, but we will have a show coming up on Monday. As always, we'll go back to our 5 shows a week programming, and we're looking forward to starting to dive into some of the positional battles that are going to be coming up in less than 3 weeks in Seahawks training camp. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend, and thanks for listening. Go Hawks.